Yeah, I thought it's
Like I'm looking at a calendar.
Oh, yeah, I'm ready, all right. You ready? All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this regular meeting of the Town of Griswold Board of Finance to order June 17th, 2025, 6 PM in the Town Hall Meeting Room. First item on the agenda is the roll call to order.
We have all members present with the exception of Gail Rook Norman and Mark Ponte.
Okay, second item on the agenda, public forum. Does anyone wish to speak? Okay, with that, we're going to move on to item 3, approval of minutes. A, May 20th, 25, regular meeting minutes.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes for May 20th, regular meeting. Second.
Okay, first and second, any discussion? And we're going to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 3B, approval of minutes, June 11th, 2025, special meeting minutes.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes from June 11th, special meeting.
First and second, any discussion? Okay, we're going to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, new business, presentation by auditors of fiscal year 2024 audit report. They are not here as of yet, so I can get a motion to bypass that and move on, and then we'll just come back to it.
Make a motion to bypass 4A until after, or the end until they show up.
Second.
Okay, first and second, motion would be to bypass 4A until they get here. Any discussion? Okay, we're gonna vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we'll move on to 4B, Finance Director's Monthly Report.
All right, we're getting toward the end of the year. I gave you our revenue and expenditure reports. Revenues right now we're at $42,230,310.81. That is 99.82% of our budgeted revenues. I anticipate coming in around 400,000 over what we had budgeted. Biggest drivers are interest income, tuition, and recycling fees, because what we talked about with the SCARA issue, it's helping our revenues, but it's hurting our expenses. Expenditures recorded date, we're at $40,335,788.53. That is 95.34% of budget expenditures. I anticipate finishing around $200,000 under budget. There are some items over budget. I was gonna do transfers this month, but there's a couple bills I'm waiting on. I just want to do them all at once. So the July meeting will definitely be doing our transfers to cover all of those.
Chairman, real quick.
Go ahead, sir.
Question.
Yep.
That $400 over, is that
400,000.
including the $400,000? Is that including the 200 under? Or is that
Yeah,
a
so it'll
budget?
be a net of about 600.
Six, okay, just want to make sure that.
Yeah. So because of that, I'm looking at our fund balance at the end of the year now to be around 21.43% of our budget. But we really have to look at next year's proposed budget, because that's where we're gonna be falling now. And we're gonna be using 550,000 of it to cover part of next year's budget. So as a percentage of the proposed budget, if it passes, we'll be at about 19.36. So we'll still be above that. So we should be able to use some capital again, or some fund balance again next year to cover capital, because that 550,000 is going to be assigned fund balance, but once we get into next year, that'll move into unassigned because it's no longer going to be used to cover that. So we should be able to do that again next year to help fund more capital. Any questions on that report?
Eric, do you have any idea what the collection rate is for the tax collector?
Right around 98%.
98.
Yeah.
Is that, we budget 98 or 97?
98.
98.
We're gonna be right around where we budget. Also, just to keep you updated, I've been going through everything at the Board of Education, trying to get everything reconciled. We're looking pretty good there. I don't anticipate any delays in the audit next year. Everything should be ready to go. My goal is to have everything ready to go in September for the auditors to come in and
Are you working with this with somebody from the Board of Ed or just yourself?
well, there's two people over there that are helping me. But I'm doing the reconciling, making sure we have the proper expenses and revenues reported.
Eric, did the significant increase in audit fees have anything to do with the extending the audit in order to complete it?
I think, well, we had completed our 4-year contract, and then we had to have them re-up for another year.
Okay,
Because of all the work involved, I'm sure that
yeah,
played a part in increasing them. But what I've been seeing with towns everywhere is everyone's audit fees are going up quite a bit. There's just more that they have to do. Some of the testing, so. That's why when we went out to bid this time, the prices were pretty much within that range we had paid this year.
So, Eric, with regard to, you currently wearing 2 hats. Are you confident? I did notice in the audit, there were 3 significant, deficiencies that were listed regarding, issues over at the, Board of Ed. Are you confident that you will be able to have those corrected so that they won't be listed again in next year's audit?
I am.
Okay.
Cause if everything's ready for them in September, that'll knock out the first 2, and then the third one I'm working on now, and
Okay.
that'll be cleared up probably
Okay.
within the next month.
Good evening. Does anyone have any more questions for Eric? Okay, in that case, we're gonna go back to 4A. Actually, you want me to give you a couple of minutes? You want me to move on to
No, I just,
something else? I don't,
presentation to hand out.
okay. Okay, Rosie, I'm sure you remember Chris King from King, the auditors.
Yeah, I hit traffic on both sides of Hartford.
Understandable.
The weather.
Okay, so this will address 4A presentation by auditors for fiscal year 24 audit report. And I'm gonna hand the floor over to you.
Okay. Okay, so, presentation somewhat similar to what I've done in prior years. Always try to make a few changes to make it interesting, but, if we start right inside the front page, just a summary of the different sections that are in the audit. Management discussion and analysis, which is a narrative, very high level condensed report. Then you have your financial statements, which is many, many pages of different types of statements, budget basis, fund basis, full accrual basis. The deeper you go, the more detail you see. You also have both the state and federal single audits, which are the compliance audits. The state gives us an audit guide, and a procedure for selecting, which grants each year to test for compliance. And they're, they have unique requirements. A lot of them have to do with reporting. They want us to test that the reporting you're doing upstream into their systems agrees to what is here locally in town hall. Same with the federal single audit, and I'll give you some more details on that later. We also do specified set of procedures for the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed EFS system, they are also reporting upstream. And the State Department of Education has its own set of processes the procedures that they want us to do and to test certain key numbers that they have us test. So for this year, the EFS report is not yet final. And we talked to the state and they said, because of the turnover at the Board of Ed, they said to issue it as it stands. We just recently asked Eric for a couple items of information he's gonna try to get for us.
I just got the desk on.
Oh, you just got the desk on?
Yeah, I'll email him in the morning.
All right, that was the last piece. So we will be wrapping that up. Although it's not complete again, because of the turnover of business management.
Can I interrupt you for just one second? Do you see is there any negatives that can be attributed to that incompleteness?
So what usually happens is we do the testing and then if there are variances between what we see in the numbers and what's reported, then usually the business manager will address those, make corrections in the system, in the state system, and then it gets recertified, resubmitted. The state told us to just for this year, leave the variances that we've identified. So we report it to them and then it's gonna be on them to decide if they want those to be investigated and worked out.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've issued some strange reports to the state. They only, I think, recently started looking at them. We've been talking to the Department of Ed and when they make changes and saying, can you please consult with us first before you make these changes? Because sometimes the changes that they ask are just impossible. They can't be done. But in the past couple of years, they've actually started looking at it, which is nice. So then the actual report where it says annual financial report highlights. These are the various sections I mentioned, page 11 and 12, very consolidated with depreciation. So your bridges are being capitalized and depreciated, probably not terribly helpful for you in your budgeting process. That was put in a while back and it was supposed to help basically the bond issuers, the credit rating agencies assess the health of the town. They admit that they really haven't figured out how to use that beneficially.
Who hasn't figured out?
The credit rating agencies, so they asked for this.
They asked for it, they can't figure it out, and they're telling me it's useless.
And it's still mandated to be used. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys don't use it.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, I
I'm just
doubt,
listening to what you're saying, so, you know.
Yeah.
One thing doesn't, whatever.
yeah, there's a lot of mandates,
Yeah.
as you know, that don't make a lot of sense. Page 13 to 16, that's a fund presentation. I think this is where it starts to get useful. Your fund balance, 8.9 million in the general fund. One of the benchmarks, is that you have 2 months of revenues in surplus. That's the, Government Finance Officers Association. That's 16.67%. Is the benchmark. You're currently at 22.5%. So you're at least meeting the benchmark. People ask me how much is enough or how much is too much, and I think that's really a management decision on a town by town basis. But I do say, I always say you have to have enough to weather a catastrophe. And Oxford, you may remember, has had a lot of flooding. Talked to them this week. They also had a couple school projects in process right before the flood hit, so they were in these contracts where they were spending tons of money. They're now fronted $7 million out of the town general fund that they're hoping FEMA's gonna get back to them. So just, when people are trying to pare down the fund balance, there is a situation where having that extra fund balance on hand is helping them to get through a really catastrophic period. They're still cleaning up. Capital Projects Fund is one of what's defined as a major fund. So that has various revenue sources and projects going at any time. You can see you had grant revenue, you had money from Yankee Gas, you have money from the general fund as part of the budget. Had quite a bit of activity this year between the road expenditures, and then that project, which is grant funded for the housing authority. It's got some federal grant funding.
Just a quick question. Have you seen any evidence in the past, that FEMA is not giving them the money back at different towns?
I've never seen it, but so this is the first time I've heard a town get a little nervous about it, because I guess it's been a while,
Okay.
but they've been, you
That
know,
was just
yeah.
your experience, that's all.
Yeah, and my experience has never been a problem, just, you know, time delay, but they're now, like I said, this flooding happened a year ago. They're right now waiting on about $7 million.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
the other big thing that's been going on is the ARPA grant fund. All the towns have separate fund for the ARPA grants. Didn't have a whole lot of activity in 23-24. There was 1.8 million left at June 24. I'm sure it's lower now. I had to obligate the funds by December 24, and then you have a spend down period, so that I'm sure that's winding down. The next page is our colorful picture. We talked about the fund balance a few minutes ago. This is just a 3-year trend. You can see it, you have been increasing basically every year. Then we have another page that says more highlights continued. Now, these are references to the note disclosures. After you get through these fund financial statements, you get into the note, which give detail on the financial statements. There's a schedule of your liabilities, so you can see how the GO bonds are being paid down, or when you get new ones, how they add. MERS, so you're in the municipal employee retirement system pension plan. So that liability has increased, that, you know, the actuaries do that work based on your participation in the plan. That's a multi-town plan that you're in to try to share and flatten out the costs and the liabilities. There's a big section from 31 to 42 on the MERS and the TRD plans, just all pensions. We do list, just for information, your TRB liability. If the state's not paying for it, is 49 million. You're currently responsible for none, and the state put in 4.7 on behalf of the town in the past year. That TRB plan's in the news a lot because it had been underfunded for a number of years. So even though your percentage is still 0 and has been 0, their funding percentage has been increasing. Then we look at page 46 to 55, gone through the notes. Now we're into some pretty high level detail financial statements. This is your budget report, which would be basically it's reporting back the budget that you adopted. It's going to be similar to the numbers that you get in your periodic reporting. Revenues are higher than expenditures by almost 500,000. That was your surplus for the year in the general fund. And that was not even using the 850 that you had budgeted to use. You had planned to use fund balance to balance the budget. You didn't need it and still had a $485,000 surplus. So that's what we've been seeing in towns. I think I'll read the next bullet and then editorialize. Taxes receivable balance, 850,000. 3.6% of the current levy, just another benchmark that we use and we track. We typically see people around 2 to 6%. The 2020, 21, 22, 23, we saw this outstanding tax balance go down in all our towns. People were at 3 and 4%, got down to record levels of 2% or 1%. Tax collections were very, very good. We're starting now in this 24 years to see it tick back up a little bit. Not that it's high, it's just that it was extraordinarily low when COVID hit. People stayed home, they had money to pay their taxes. And also on the budget side, a lot of people had pretty good years in their budgets, 21, 22, 23, because a lot of federal money was coming in. And now, and people were planning to use their surplus to balance the budget. And then investment rates popped back up and your interest income was much higher than budgeted and things like that, so. Your results are comparable to what we've seen elsewhere, but we're seeing a lot more tightening of the belt now. I'm sure you're seeing as a lot of this federal funding is drying up. You had ARPA money to fund capital projects, the schools had a lot of ESSER money, and there's other, COVID and ARPA related money to fund things. And then in the very end, we have these statistical schedules which show you 10-year trends on fund balances, revenue collection, so you can see rates. And you probably would see things getting really good in 2021, 2023, you know, now they may start to taper off. We have this page on the federal and state single audits, which are two different packages, so you should have 3 total core audit. One for federal, one for state. Federal and state are very similar. But the federal one is federally sourced funds. So again, ARPA, school nutrition, the project for the housing authority, that's federally sourced, even though some of it comes through the state. And then the state single audit is state sourced money. So ECS, town aid, road, etc. So within these packages, there's a schedule of financial assistance. And so on the state one, you had 13.5 million of state sourced money. But as is common in most towns, 11.6 of that was ECS and special ed cost reimbursement grants. And then typically you have your next largest grants are town aid, road, and municipal revenue sharing, or LoSIP when you have projects. And we do go through and test those. I didn't list on here which one we tested this year. Town aid, road, LoSIP, and then the municipal grant aid. Those are the 3 that we tested for compliance this year. On the federal single audit, you had 5 million in federal assistance. Again, a lot of it is education related. 2.3 was ESSER, that's all education. And then there were some other education grants. Some are routine. And then but then about 427,000 was also other COVID money from that actually is sourced from the Office of the Treasury. This year, the programs we tested with the child nutrition cluster, which is common. We probably test it every 3 years or so, typically in a town. They have us cycle through the grants so that we don't test the same ones every year. And then Education Stabilization Fund, which is COVID money, so we've been testing that a lot. Everywhere we go. We do have a page on findings. We've had findings over the years for Griswold. We had a material weakness, which is more severe. We had that in 23. We do not have a material weakness in 24. However, we do have significant deficiencies, which are findings that are just one level down, but they are still in writing. They are spelled out in each of these single audit reports. So this is just a summary here. Board of Ed to the town, numbers from the Board of Ed side to the town side. Probably the most common finding in the state of Connecticut. This was a material weakness last year. We do think that there was some improvement, and so we downgraded it to significant deficiency. Again, there's more detail in the finding. I was thinking, tried to think long and hard about this year. I think that I've seen this elsewhere as well. Over the years, as the town has helped to or tried to assist in this process, the town, and it happens in Griswold, like it happens other places, starts taking over little pieces of it. and start running some parallel records to help with the reconciliation. And then I think what happens is, then it's gonna be harder. It's not a criticism, it's just a way of what you had to do to get through. It's gonna be harder for the Board of Ed side to stand on their own because they've been relying on the town side to help them get through this reconciliation.
Taking over pieces of the Board of Education's job of financing.
Like tracking control totals back to the town side. So I do think going forward, I think it's gonna be harder on the education side to take it back over and be 100% independent, because they haven't been able to, and the town's been helping get through this process. And I see this elsewhere, so that was just kind of my observation. The second one is related to some of the Board of Ed accounts, scholarship funds, and student activity funds. There are some, I describe them as stale balances, so old outstanding items and reconciliations. And then there's also some other account balances and the trial balances that the numbers are kind of sitting there, they're stale, they haven't been reconciled in a while. That's a repeat issue that really should be addressed. And then the third one, there's a bank account that had fraudulent activity go through it in a previous year. So no more checks were being drawn on that, but the Board of Ed direct deposits, and there's a grant, to the child
Care for Kids.
Care for Kids, child care grant is being wired into it. And so our recommendation is this account had been compromised. You moved all the checks out, but the account should be closed. You shouldn't still be using it for electronic transactions.
Could you explain that a little bit on what that was about?
I think we had discussed it a while ago. 2 checks were fraudulently, they were fake checks, but they had our account number and everything. Someone went to the bank, tried to cash it. The bank caught them. And then we worked on closing that account. But these, direct deposits and Care for Kids, payments were still going into that old account. So I talked to Deb a while ago to try and get her to switch them to different accounts so we can close it out, but.
And those fraudulent checks, were they ever found out who was doing that?
I don't know if they did. The bank didn't really say anything on that. They stopped it before they could cash it, so. But I mean, it's been pretty common according to the bank. And one thing that's gonna help that is the bank just recently started, they're gonna be doing positive pay, which I don't know if you're aware of what that is. Basically, we have to let them know, okay, this is our check runs, and then they're gonna make sure any checks that go to get cashed are already approved by us, so that's something, and they asked us to be the, I don't wanna say guinea pig, but do the test run for them, and then they're not gonna charge us any fees for doing that, so that's gonna be a good extra procedure that we're gonna be able to do now.
Sounds good.
So that's our findings page, you know, that's the bad news. And that's the end of what I have. So I can hand it back to you and try to field any questions.
So, I'm gonna kind of put you on the spot for just a moment. You mentioned about, you know, the difficulty of the Board of Ed kind of being able to stand on their own, and kind of got my mind thinking, so. In all of the municipalities that King and King services or has serviced, do you have any instances where the finance director and the business manager is a shared position?
Yes.
Okay. From an auditing standpoint, do you have any concerns when that's done for any of those municipalities that you perhaps have audited?
No, those municipalities, tend to have fewer problems.
Okay. So it's actually cleaner.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, because you're not combining two different systems, because you have two standalone or
Sure.
more than two standalone
Mhm.
systems. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've seen people where they have one joint department.
And there's no state regulations on that, no problems.
No.
Okay.
There was a study done. Plainville, maybe, that everybody refers to. They were one of the first people to look at it. And they had a consultant study done before they jumped into it.
So they jumped into one system
Yes, yeah, so,
instead of two separate systems?
yes, yeah. Let's try to remember, because there's a lot of ledgers and everything going on, but, yeah. Or even when there's still two separate systems or multiple systems, you have the same set of people working on them. You know, so all the information is in one location. And then usually, because now you're on the same network, you know, you can link and transfer data faster.
I did notice, in the note 13, page 44, upcoming pronouncements, and you talk about some of the various reporting that hit on July 1, 2024, July 1, 2025. Are there going to be, are any of those significant enough where, I want to try to figure out how I want to phrase this. Not that it's necessarily kind of a gotcha moment for the municipality, but something that they really need to prepare for, because there could be other ramifications or byproducts as a result of any of that.
Well, there's 101 for compensated absences. I think the gotcha part of it is gonna take more effort on the town's part. This compensated absences, basically, you might think of it as PTO. And we do quantify a liability. But it was always, basically, if so-and-so were retired or was terminated, what was payable when they left. So, which is generally less than any person's PTO on any given day. This 101 it has changed it so that the liability will include any PTO that the person would get a termination, plus any that they have now that they're likely to use before termination. So even if unused vacation is not paid out at termination, if unpaid vacation, now it's gonna be quantified. So that is gonna take more work on any town. So more work on Eric for sure. And I think it's not just another half hour. I think there's a little bit of substantial work there.
Right.
And the same for the Board of Ed. That's really the one, it's because a lot of times these come into effect without little impact, but that one does really have some impact on municipal personnel, municipal staff.
And it's really just stating the liability as opposed to actually fundamentally having to carry the liability, though.
Usually, those statements that I talked about in the beginning that nobody cares about,
Yeah.
that's where those liabilities are quantified and carried.
Okay,
There would be a note disclosure like there is now that says you have X amount of PTO that we paid on termination. That number is gonna blow up.
right,
But the only balance sheet it goes on is that government wide, and governments typically are not carrying those government wide balances like depreciation internally. It's usually an auditor mechanism.
okay,
I mean, you get to the bigger cities, they're doing it.
okay.
So again, another era of good news.
Anyone have any questions?
Oh, sir.
Anyone? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to 4C, discussion and possible action on appropriation of fees collected for LoCIP purposes. Eric?
So one thing we've been getting a lot of complaints on, other than the roads, is the front doors. They're not really good for handicapped persons. They are ADA compliant, but we're looking to automate them.
Here,
Yes, the
Okay.
front doors. We get a lot of complaints during the elections and referendums. Because if you, those doors are pretty heavy, and if you have a walker or anything, it's just really a safety issue, so. We talked about it and I said, I think I know a good place to get the money from. And that is, I print out a couple sections from the general statutes. The first one's from section 34A for the fees. This deals with town clerk. She collects fees for each recording. $3 of such fees shall become part of the general revenue of the municipality and be used to pay for local capital improvement projects as defined in section 7-536. So I printed out a part of that section as well. And if you look at number 4, it says, this is their definitions. Local capital improvement project means a municipal capital expenditure project for any of the following purposes. So D says public building construction other than schools, including renovation, repair, code compliance, energy conservation, and fire safety projects. So I think that fits. It's a renovation. It's upgrading our entryway, so it fits the criteria to qualify for LoCIP funds. I also included a quote that we had received. This is the same company that did the doors at the senior center, and they've been pretty good. What this will do is allow both doors to be able to automatically push a button, they open, and be a lot safer, and I think it'll make a lot of people a lot happier. Right now in that $3 for each recording goes into our capital non-recurring fund. I track it separately under LoCIP fees. And we have over $30,000 in there right now, so we got plenty of money to be able to do this. I just think it makes sense to use those fees, seeing how they're so stringent on what they can be used for.
I think that's a good idea.
When was the last time we used funds from this account?
Been quite a few years.
I'm just curious to see how long did it take for us to accumulate $30,000.
I want to say we usually have about 6,000 or 7,000 a year
Okay.
goes into there.
Eric, not that it, I guess, has anything to do with us, more out of curiosity. They're gonna hit one button on the outside and one button on the inside, and that's gonna open up both doors at the same time, or? Is it one door on the outside, they come in and then they hit another button, it's the door on the inside?
Pedestal outside, they hit that, and open the outside and the inside door on one side. Same thing on the inside, you have one button, the inside and the outside door on one side.
There's one out for you.
All 4 doors won't be opening, it'll just be. 2
One
on
side.
Right, okay.
That was my question.
Yep.
And because of the BOF system we have, there's gonna be a key switch on the wall that gets shut off at night. Just so nobody can hit that pedestal out front.
Okay. And in terms of, in just kind of thinking out loud, you're okay with like the winter season with that, both doors being open at the same time as opposed to one and one?
Pick up here in the vestibule, so.
Can I ask a question? Because I know the senior center, you hit the outside, one door opens. When you get into the inner space, you hit a second button and that second door opens, so that they're not both open at the same time.
Problem here is we don't have enough for a wheelchair to be in between the outside door and the inside door. And all that. Okay, that would have to be the longer space by ADA.
We do need a motion, yes.
to approve the appropriation of LoCIP fees for
$17,000 for,
$17,444.75.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second the motion?
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we're gonna vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Just a quick question, why does it say senior center up on top?
Just because we're in their system as senior center for their customer, because they did the senior center doors.
Okay.
So it just says Town of Grizzle has a senior center address. But if you look at ship two, it's got our address.
Very good. I was just.
Eric, what's the ETA for this project?
I don't know, do you know when they can do it?
6 months out, year out?
No, I would think it pretty soon.
One, I gotta order the stuff.
Right, 4D, discussion and possible action on setting special meeting date. So the referendum is on the 24th. I would love to be able to set a special meeting date on the 25th. For the purpose of either setting the mill rate or, if we have to, reworking that budget one more time and then adjourning back to referendum. So rather than cancel it and push it out in the event that we need to, it'll be a duality of purpose. I can't imagine that either way it would take all that long. I think one would certainly be significantly shorter than the next one, but. So how does the 25th look?
I'm good.
Okay,
I have plans.
Rob?
Oh, 25th, yes. I believe I am good.
Matt? Okay. And just as a backup and a kind of matter of courtesy, how's the 26th look?
Good.
Good. Okay, I don't know about Mark, but I do know that the 25th and 26th are both good for Gail. Question now is, how is the 25th and the 26th for you? Are they both open?
I can make sure they are, yeah.
Okay.
We need a motion.
Yeah, you can. Motion to set.
26th is okay with you? Okay, so yeah, somebody wants to make that motion, we'll go ahead and we'll set that.
Make a motion for the special meeting for the 25th and
26th,
26th.
for the purpose of either setting the mill rate or reworking the Board of Education budget?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
At what time?
6 P.M.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, 5A, update and discussion on bonding projects, old business.
Still not really much of an update. Sewer project, we're still waiting on the cabinet pieces to come in. They have a 12-week lead time, so we're just waiting on that. As far as the water goes, we've been talking with the state regarding the project. We still expect it to be done by the end of the year, the water line. But nothing's been going on right now. I think they want to do the bridge crossing soon, but the other part will be after that. So you may see something going on there.
Could be done before winter.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions?
I do have one that is kind of on topic, but off topic. That main is forced main down there, so there's gonna be no tie-ins from any of the side streets or the houses in the future? Or is that,
Two line, gravity and forklift.
So they will be able to tie in if anybody chooses to? All right, I actually had a real estate agent ask me the other day, and I really wasn't positive. I thought they could, but wasn't sure.
People with failed systems that have expressed interest, but we're not ready.
Right, yeah, that's what I told them. Okay.
What are these cabinet pieces you're talking about?
They hold all the electronics
Oh,
for the station.
the pump station.
Hey, public forum, does anyone wish to speak? Okay, we're gonna move on to item 8, adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.